What happens when one of Hollywood's most admired actresses finds herself under intense pressure during a daytime television interview? What begins as a friendly promotional appearance quickly turns into a tense confrontation after a question crosses a personal boundary. Jennifer Lawrence arrives expecting the usual combination of movie talk, jokes, and relaxed conversation. But the interview soon takes a very different direction. The episode begins with the familiar energy of The View. The studio is filled with enthusiastic fans, many excited to see Jennifer in person. The hosts prepare for what appears to be an ordinary celebrity interview connected to her latest film. Jennifer is expected to discuss her new project, share stories from the set, and perhaps entertain the audience with one of her famously funny stories about her tendency to stumble into awkward situations. Joy Behar sits at the table going through her notes. While the atmosphere around her seems normal, her expression suggests that she has prepared something more serious. The other hosts remain focused on the planned interview, unaware that the conversation is about to become uncomfortable. When Jennifer walks onto the stage, the audience responds with loud applause. She greets the hosts warmly, smiling and laughing as she takes her seat. Her relaxed personality immediately puts everyone at ease. The introduction is filled with compliments, cheers, and excitement from the crowd. Jennifer thanks the hosts for having her back and explains that she always enjoys visiting the show because the atmosphere makes her feel comfortable. For the first several minutes, everything proceeds exactly as expected. Sarah asks about Jennifer's new movie, and the actress answers with a mixture of humor and professionalism. She talks about the challenges of filming and shares an amusing story about accidentally walking into a glass door because she thought it was open. The audience laughs, the hosts join in. The conversation moves naturally toward Jennifer's well-known clumsiness. She jokes that accidents have become such a regular part of her life that even her publicist has started allowing extra time in her schedule for unexpected mishaps. She recalls recently tripping over absolutely nothing and somehow becoming tangled in a red carpet setup. The relaxed discussion continues with topics including her preparation for the role, her experiences in Hollywood, and even her interest in pottery. Jennifer jokes about making several uneven bowls, but says she is strangely proud of them. Her easygoing attitude keeps the audience laughing. She appears completely comfortable. Then the atmosphere changes. Joy, who has been relatively quiet during the earlier part of the interview, suddenly leans forward. Tone becomes more serious, immediately signaling that she wants to move away from the lighter conversation. Jennifer, Joy says, she wants to discuss something more serious. She brings up the subject of privilege in Hollywood and begins asking about how Jennifer's upbringing may have contributed to her success. Jennifer's smile becomes more restrained. She acknowledges that she has been fortunate throughout her career and recognizes that many opportunities she received were not available to everyone. She explains that her family supported her ambitions and made significant sacrifices to help her pursue acting. But Joy continues. She points to Jennifer's childhood in Kentucky and refers to stories the actress has previously shared about her family's financial circumstances. Joy then emphasizes that Jennifer was able to move to New York at a young age to pursue acting, something many families would struggle to afford. Jennifer responds that her parents worked extremely hard and made sacrifices because they believed in her dream. Her voice remains controlled, but the warmth that had defined the beginning of the interview starts to disappear. Joy appears unsatisfied. She looks through her notes and then raises a more personal issue involving Jennifer's family background. She refers to information about her father's construction business and suggests that Jennifer's family may have been more financially comfortable than the actress had previously described. The studio suddenly becomes quiet. The shift is immediate. Jennifer's posture stiffens and her expression changes from amusement to visible frustration. The audience, which had been laughing moments earlier, becomes noticeably still. Jennifer asks Joy to clarify exactly what she is suggesting. Joy maintains a calm expression and says she is simply pointing out what she describes as inconsistencies in Jennifer's previous discussions about her upbringing. She suggests that some people might believe the story presented publicly has been shaped for a particular image. The comment lands heavily. Jennifer's patience appears to be wearing thin. Her voice becomes firmer as she defends the way she has spoken about her childhood. She emphasizes that her family's sacrifices were real and that her journey into acting was not some carefully constructed public relations story. The other hosts begin exchanging uncomfortable looks. The light-hearted mood from earlier has completely disappeared. What had started as a promotional interview now feels like a confrontation. Jennifer remains seated, but her body language reveals how strongly the subject has affected her. She looks directly toward Joy, refusing to laugh off the accusations or allow the conversation to return easily to the movie. Joy continues holding her position, while Jennifer becomes increasingly defensive. The tension at the table grows with every exchange, leaving the audience uncertain about where the conversation will go next. The interview has clearly crossed into territory neither Jennifer nor the audience expected when she first walked onto the stage. What began with laughter, movie stories, playful conversation has transformed into a deeply personal discussion about family, money, opportunity, and the public image of a Hollywood star. Jennifer's normally relaxed demeanor is gone. For the first time that morning, the actress appears genuinely angry, and the entire studio seems to recognize that the conversation has reached a breaking point. Jennifer's expression changed in an instant. The warmth and humor that had defined the beginning of the interview disappeared, replaced by unmistakable anger. Her eyes narrowed as she stared across the table, visibly struggling to contain her frustration. Crafted for public consumption. Jennifer repeated, her voice growing louder. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The suggestion that she had deliberately reshaped her childhood story for sympathy appeared to strike a deeply personal nerve. Joy remained firm, insisting that she was only comparing Jennifer's public statements with information she had researched. She brought up Jennifer's father's construction business and mentioned the family's reported horse farm, arguing that these details seemed inconsistent with the humble upbringing Jennifer had discussed in previous interviews. Jennifer immediately raised her hand. Stop right there. Her words were sharp enough to make the atmosphere even more uncomfortable. She accused Joy of making assumptions about her family without understanding what had actually happened behind closed doors. To Jennifer, discussing her family's finances on national television as though they were evidence in an investigation was deeply offensive. The audience became completely silent. The laughter from earlier had vanished. Cameras moved closer to capture Jennifer's reaction, while producers communicated rapidly behind the scenes. The other hosts appeared increasingly uneasy as they watched the confrontation intensify. Whoopi tried to step in and calm the situation, suggesting that perhaps Joy was simply attempting to explain her point. Jennifer refused to let the discussion be redirected. No, Whoopi, let her finish. She kept her eyes fixed on Joy and challenged her to continue. If Joy had spent so much time researching Jennifer's family, Jennifer wanted her to explain exactly what else she believed she had discovered. Rather than backing away, Joy continued. She brought up Jennifer's mother's side of the family and referred to a distant connection to the entertainment business. According to Joy, that information complicated the popular image of Jennifer as a young woman from a small town who entered Hollywood without meaningful connections. That accusation pushed Jennifer beyond her limit. She suddenly stood up from her chair. The movement was so abrupt that the chair rolled backward and nearly tipped over. A collective gasp came from the audience. For a brief moment, even the people behind the cameras seemed unsure of what would happen next. Jennifer began explaining the supposed entertainment connection. She said the relative Joy was referring to had worked as a grip on small film productions years earlier. Jennifer emphasized that she had barely known the man, had only encountered him a couple of times, and had never received career assistance from him. He had not made calls for her, opened doors for her, or played any meaningful role in her acting career. She continued, now pacing as she spoke. Then Jennifer addressed her father's construction business directly. She explained that the company had eventually collapsed while she was still a teenager. According to her account, the family lost their home. Her parents were forced to stay with her grandmother. Jennifer had to navigate life in New York while trying to establish herself as an actress. The anger in her voice was no longer simply about the interview. It was about years of feeling that people misunderstood or simplified her family's history. She accused Joy of looking at a few pieces of information and turning them into a story that did not resemble the reality her family experienced. Jennifer described difficult nights when her mother was frightened about the family's financial future. She spoke about the pressure her father experienced while trying to keep his business alive and the sacrifices both parents made while supporting her ambitions. She also recalled periods when money was extremely tight and inexpensive meals were sometimes all she could afford. The studio remained frozen. The cameras continued recording while Jennifer's emotional reaction became the center of the broadcast. The normally playful actress appeared visibly overwhelmed by the direction of the conversation. What had started as a discussion about privilege had become a deeply personal defense of her family. Sarah attempted to intervene, asking Jennifer to slow down and take a moment. Jennifer immediately rejected the suggestion. She turned toward the entire panel and explained that she was tired of people taking pieces of her history and reshaping them to support whatever argument they wanted to make. She said her family's hardships should not be dismissed simply because the complete story was more complicated than a simple Hollywood narrative. For the first time, Joy appeared less confident. She clarified that she had never claimed Jennifer's struggles were imaginary. Her argument, she said, was that there could be additional details that created a more complicated picture of Jennifer's background. Jennifer responded with a bitter laugh. There was nothing humorous about it. She explained that the broader story was about parents who sacrificed nearly everything to give their daughter an opportunity. Her mother had taken on financial burdens to help support Jennifer's ambitions, even when the family could barely manage them. She also described the emotional toll her father experienced as his business deteriorated and the stress of watching years of work disappear. Jennifer's frustration centered on one point: difficult circumstances do not become less real simply because someone can find evidence that a family once had money or opportunities. The other hosts could see that the interview was spiraling further away from its original purpose. Sunny attempted to redirect the conversation towards safer territory, hoping to bring the tension back under control. But the atmosphere inside the studio had already changed completely. The promotional interview had become an emotional confrontation. Jennifer's defense of her family had transformed the entire mood at the table. Jennifer turned towards Sunny, her expression still filled with frustration. Sunny tried to explain that success in Hollywood was complicated and that every performer had a different path, but Jennifer immediately pushed back. She said the problem was that people sitting at the table seemed convinced they understood her journey better than she did herself. Jennifer explained that it was easy for someone to search the internet, collect a handful of facts, and then believe they had uncovered the complete truth about another person's life. She turned her attention back toward Joy, who had become increasingly uncomfortable and was now nervously moving her note cards around. Jennifer said the most upsetting part was not simply that Joy had gotten details wrong. What bothered her most was the attempt to minimize the hardships her family had experienced. Those difficulties, Jennifer insisted, had shaped her personality, her determination, and the way she approached her career. The studio remained unusually quiet. Everyone appeared aware that the interview had moved far beyond ordinary celebrity television. Producers behind the cameras were reportedly trying to decide whether to interrupt the segment or allow the confrontation to continue. Joy finally looked up and attempted to clarify her intentions. She said she had never wanted to diminish Jennifer's struggles and claimed that her original goal had been to discuss privilege, opportunity, and the complicated path to success in Hollywood. Jennifer's voice became emotional as she responded. She said that accusing her of creating a false version of her childhood was not simply a disagreement about privilege. In her view, Joy had questioned her honesty and suggested that everything she had accomplished was somehow less legitimate because of assumptions about her parents' financial circumstances. The tension around the table continued to grow. Alyssa appeared visibly stunned by what was happening. She remained quiet, watching the exchange unfold as the other hosts struggled to determine how to intervene without making the situation worse. Jennifer continued speaking, now with even greater confidence. She explained that there was another part of her story Joy's research had apparently missed. When her father's business experienced serious financial trouble and the family lost much of what they had, Jennifer said the entertainment industry did not suddenly open its doors for her. According to Jennifer's account, opportunities became harder rather than easier. People who had previously shown interest stopped returning calls. Potential representatives disappeared. She felt she had to rebuild her professional life almost entirely from scratch. Her words carried a mixture of anger and hurt. Jennifer then challenged the idea of privilege itself. She argued that privilege could also mean having the security to sit in a position of authority and dissect another person's history without experiencing the circumstances being discussed. She said it was easy to question someone's truth when their experience did not fit the story another person wanted to tell. Joy appeared increasingly uncomfortable. She shifted in her chair and occasionally looked toward the production area, seemingly hoping someone would step in and take control of the conversation. Jennifer, however, showed no sign of stopping. She described rebuilding her acting career through smaller opportunities. She said she auditioned repeatedly for minor roles, independent productions, and commercials whenever she could find them. She described struggling financially, staying wherever she could, taking restaurant work while continuing to attend auditions. Most importantly, Jennifer insisted that she had never relied on some secret family connection to obtain her opportunities, because, in her account, such a powerful connection never existed. Whoopi eventually attempted to bring the discussion back under control. She acknowledged Jennifer's passion and suggested that the conversation might be better served by moving back to the actress's new film. Jennifer immediately rejected the suggestion. She held up her hand and made it clear that she was not prepared to simply change the subject. Joy had raised the issue, questioned her family history, and challenged her personal integrity on national television. Jennifer wanted the accusations addressed before discussing anything else. The audience remained completely focused on the exchange. The confrontation had become more than an uncomfortable celebrity interview. Jennifer was openly defending her family, her memories, and the legitimacy of the path she believed she had taken to build her career. Outside the studio, the controversy was portrayed as rapidly spreading across social media, with clips of the confrontation attracting intense attention. Inside the studio, however, the tension was much more immediate. Joy cleared her throat before responding. She appeared to recognize that she was facing a difficult choice: apologize and attempt to calm Jennifer, or continue defending her original argument. She chose to defend herself. Joy said she understood that Jennifer was upset, but believed the actress was reacting too strongly. She described her comments as an attempt to examine how different backgrounds and opportunities can influence success in Hollywood. The audience reacted with an audible gasp. Jennifer stared at Joy in disbelief. Overreacting, she repeated, her voice suddenly becoming much quieter. The change in tone made the moment even more tense. Jennifer said she could not understand how Joy could characterize her reaction as excessive after suggesting on national television that she had created a misleading story about her own upbringing. Joy quickly objected. She insisted that she had never directly called Jennifer a liar. But Jennifer immediately reminded her of the language Joy had already used. Joy had suggested that Jennifer's story had been crafted for public consumption and had repeatedly questioned whether the actress had accurately represented her childhood. Jennifer's expression showed that, to her, the distinction between those statements and directly calling her dishonest was meaningless. The conversation had reached a point where neither side appeared willing to retreat. What began as a discussion about Hollywood privilege had become a heated dispute over family history, personal integrity, and the right to tell one's own story. Jennifer responded without hesitation. She reminded Joy that she had explicitly questioned the way Jennifer described her childhood and had suggested that there were contradictions in the story of her family's struggles. Jennifer made it clear that she considered those statements far more serious than simple questions about privilege. The atmosphere around the table became increasingly uncomfortable. Sarah looked visibly shaken, while Sunny continued writing notes, seemingly trying to find a way to rescue the interview. Alyssa remained unusually quiet, staring downward as the confrontation continued. Joy attempted to regain control of the discussion. She explained that her intention had been to begin a broader conversation about success, opportunity, the complicated nature of Hollywood. She suggested that Jennifer was interpreting the discussion too personally. Jennifer's reaction was immediate. She gave a short laugh, but there was no humor behind it. She explained that Joy had discussed her family's finances, questioned her honesty, and suggested that her public story had been carefully constructed. To Jennifer, dismissing her reaction as overly personal completely missed the point. She then turned toward the audience. Jennifer argued that this was part of a larger problem with modern media. In her view, someone could spend a few minutes searching online, find several public records, and then assume they understood an individual's entire life. She said that collecting information from the internet did not give anyone the authority to rewrite another person's personal history. The audience responded with strong applause. The reaction appeared to strengthen Jennifer's confidence. She turned back toward Joy and continued speaking with a steady but intense tone. Jennifer challenged Joy to consider what it was like to experience genuine financial uncertainty. She described having to choose between basic expenses, needing to ask family members for help, and watching a parent struggle emotionally when years of hard work began falling apart. Joy remained quiet. Jennifer argued that people who had never experienced those circumstances should be cautious about questioning someone else's memories and personal experiences. Her point was not simply about Hollywood or celebrity status. She was defending her family's history and the hardships she believed had shaped her. Whoopi made another attempt to bring the conversation under control. She acknowledged that Jennifer had made her position clear and suggested that perhaps the discussion had reached its natural conclusion. Jennifer was not convinced. She questioned whether the conversation could really be considered finished when Joy had not fully acknowledged that her assumptions might have been wrong. Jennifer wanted Joy to admit that the information she had relied upon was incomplete, and that the conclusions drawn from it were unfair. The attention of everyone in the studio shifted toward Joy. For several seconds, Joy remained silent. She appeared caught between offering a genuine apology and continuing to defend her original argument. Eventually, she spoke carefully. Joy said that if she had given Jennifer the impression that she was questioning her integrity or dismissing her family's struggles, that had not been her intention. Jennifer immediately rejected that wording. She explained that Joy had not merely created an impression. She had made specific statements about Jennifer's upbringing and suggested that her public story had been constructed for an audience. Jennifer emphasized that Joy had questioned the consistency of her account and raised doubts about the reality of her family's financial difficulties. Those statements, Jennifer said, were accusations rather than misunderstandings. The tension remained intense as producers apparently debated whether to interrupt the segment. Nobody at the table seemed certain how much longer the confrontation would continue. Eventually, Joy offered a more direct admission. She acknowledged that she had been wrong to make conclusions about Jennifer's family finances without having complete information. She then apologized for the way her questions had been presented. Jennifer immediately pointed out the weakness in the wording. She repeated the phrase about the questions merely coming across as accusatory and explained that, from her perspective, they had not simply sounded accusatory. She believed they had directly challenged her honesty. Still, Jennifer accepted the apology as a step forward. At least, she said, Joy was finally acknowledging that she had made a mistake. The atmosphere began to relax slightly. Jennifer then delivered one final statement about the subject. She made it clear that her family history was not something she considered open for public debate. Her personal struggles, she said, were not matters for strangers to interpret according to their own assumptions. She also defended her integrity, insisting that a handful of online searches could never provide enough information to understand everything someone had experienced. Jennifer eventually sat back down. Her expression had softened somewhat, although the seriousness of the confrontation remained obvious. She then shifted the discussion back toward the purpose of her appearance. If the hosts wanted to discuss the movie she had come to promote, she was willing to continue. But she made it clear that she would not tolerate another attempt to investigate or speculate about her personal life on live television. Whoopi quickly accepted the opening and redirected the interview toward Jennifer's new film. Jennifer immediately returned to professional mode. She began discussing her character, the project, and what had attracted her to the role. Her answers were composed and polished, almost as though the explosive exchange moments earlier had never occurred. Yet the atmosphere in the studio remained different. Everyone knew they had witnessed an unusually intense confrontation. The interview had started with laughter and casual conversation, but had turned into a deeply personal dispute involving family, money, opportunity, and reputation. By the time the segment ended, there were no further major incidents. Jennifer remained professional and completed the promotional portion of her appearance. Still, The confrontation had left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. Jennifer had demonstrated that beneath her familiar humor and self-deprecating personality was someone willing to defend her family and personal history when she felt they were being unfairly attacked. The studio gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but the tension from the earlier exchange remained difficult to ignore. What had been planned as a routine promotional appearance had become a dramatic television moment centered on personal boundaries, public assumptions, and the complicated relationship between celebrity interviews and private lives.